Episode 1. A Great Problem Goes West. The London and North Eastern Railway was one of the so-called Big Four companies, formed during the 1923 Grouping Act in Britain. In this form, with engines from the North Eastern region and Great Northern Railways, it lasted a mere 25 years, but left an everlasting impression of luxury, prestige and speed. 40 years after the end of British mainline steam, these are the stories they tell. This is Alan. He is a large Blue Express engine, namely an A1 Pacific. Alan lives at a big yard with many other engines, of both his class and others. He is a long, well-built engine with a lit chimney, large driving wheels and a good sense of humour. Alan is normally found pulling fast passenger trains, but sometimes pulls goods trains to the north of the border. He is normally found in the company of a delightful old engine named Stephen, after his designer. Stephen is much older than Alan, and wiser too. He pulls local goods trains, and stopping passenger trains, and he doesn't mind going more slowly than the other engines. He is one of the few engines that still wears the apple green of the London and North Eastern Railway, and is proud of it, despite the paint being worn here and there. These two engines have another shedmate, a haughty A4 Pacific named Sir Ralph. Sir Ralph is proud of his heritage, related to the famous Grizzly A3s, and a member of an elegant class of streamliners. His attitude sometimes annoys the other engines, and Alan is quick to put him in his place. But he does have a big heart, somewhere in his smoke box. This story concerns a fourth engine, not from this region. No, this engine was a visitor from the western region, taking on the duties of another engine, who had failed somewhere near London. This engine was very old, and clanked noisily along the line. His tubes were leaking, his cylinders wheezing, yet time after time he found puff to keep going. For a whole week the old engine found himself pulling goods trains from the south to the north, and would get very tired upon reaching the yard of Alan, Stephen and Sir Ralph. One day, Stephen was simmering in the yard. It had been a long day. Shunting coaches for the haughty Sir Ralph was no mean feat, and neither was preparing goods trains for the other engines. The foreman knew how hard Stephen had been working, and had given him a rest. Stephen sighed. "It's good to have some time to let your wheels rest," he said, to nobody in particular. Just at that moment, an astronomical racket came from the junction. There was the western engine, wheezing into the yard, with a long line of coal trucks. "Goodness," Stephen said, as the engine rattled past. "He's older than me," he said with wonderment, as the old engine kept going. There was little steam in the air, and no wonder, for the poor engine had none left to give. Wheezing badly, the engine finally stopped under the signal, on the goods line, and moved no more. Stephen was concerned. "He'll never make it back home," he said, and went to find Alan in the shed. "I only ask, Alan," Stephen said, "because I'm not as sprightly as I used to be myself, and you've just been repaired, so you'll want a nice run anyway." Alan laughed. "Well, if you can get the foreman to agree," he said, "I'll do it." "Thank you," Stephen said, relieved. "You know, we are all one railway now. I'm sure the old engine's friends back west—" "Back west? Are you to say you'll be helping a western engine?" Sir Ralph had appeared from the shed, hissing loudly. "Why, yes, Sir Ralph," said Alan, "unless, of course, you'd like to do the honours." Sir Ralph started. "Honour? My good fellow," he sniffed. "It is not a question of honour, but a matter of decency." "Oh? And how do you figure that?" asked Stephen innocently. "Stephen, my good engine, we are Eastern region engines. It has always been like this. Why, in the days of the London North Eastern Railway, we raced the engines of the Great Western quite frequently. We were always striving to be the best, and of course we were." Alan laughed. "The best? Maybe the clumsiest," he said. "Who managed to break all of the fine china on his train last week?" Sir Ralph puffed angrily. "That," he said, "was not my fault. If signals change at a whim while you are at speed—" "Ah, yes, and you know all about that," said Alan, winking at Stephen. "Well, of course. I am one of the fastest, if not the fastest engine in the world," Sir Ralph said grandly. "Oh, good. Then you could get our western friend here home, safely and quickly too." "Heavens, no," said Sir Ralph indignantly. "I have my own trains to pull on the morrow, thank you. I'm going back into the shed for some oil, coal, and a good nap before my evening run." And with that, he disappeared back into the shed. Alan could only laugh. "Puffed up in the smoke box he is, and no mistake," he said. "So, Stephen, where would I have to take him to?" "Well, only as far as London. There'll be another engine waiting there to take him back to his shed. Old Oak Common, I think it says on his brake van," Stephen said. "Well, that will be a good long run to stretch my wheels. Do you like my new chimney? They fitted it after this overhaul." But before Stephen could reply, the shed foreman had shouted out something to Alan's driver. "Ah, there's your answer, Stephen," Alan said, letting off some steam. "I'll see you this evening when I get back." And with that, Alan puffed out of the shed, across the points, and towards the junction, where the old engine lay waiting for him.